I'm here to tell you today about 4 signs that the federal request for proposal can be wired. Now, this is a follow-up to a very popular post that I put on LinkedIn back in the summertime, right before the end of the federal fiscal year, that must have resonated with some people because it got about 10,000 views, 11,000 views, and a lot of commentary. So why am I doing this? Well, everybody doesn't read, and some people like video better than reading blog posts. So this might be a little bit more appropriate for people, a little quicker to get through, and perhaps a little bit more entertaining. If you're in the federal contracting business, you are probably aware of some of these signs. You have a regimented process and a particular practice or a stage gate practice when you go after and you bid on federal contracts. Those new to the business or those whose numbers might be a little bit down near the end of the year start to invest in hope as a strategy, and we all know about that. And they chase what we call these bluebirds, and they ignore some of these telltale signs. So this is to help you with those and to get on focus, to understand that sometimes your time might be better spent developing that business for next year than chasing some of these bluebirds this year that you have little or no chance to earn any business. So point number one, that the RFP could be wired for somebody else. And by the way, wired RFPs aren't supposed to happen in the federal government. Talk to anybody who's been in the contracting game for a while and ask them their opinion, and then you may register your own. Point number one, the due date is hyper-aggressive. What do I mean by that? Hyper-aggressive means 10 days or less usually. If they're asking for 10 days or less and the proposal has any type of requirements that require any type of thought-provoking content, such as a technical solution, it is probably already geared for somebody else. Now, I'll make an exception to this. If this is a task order that's coming out on an existing contract vehicle where most of the technical requirements are already known and they might just be asking for human resources, program managers, contract programmers, etc., then that's certainly reasonable to be able to turn around that in 10 days or less. But if it doesn't, if there's a technical solution required, watch out, because that due date could be indicative of a problem. One way to try and smoke this out is to ask for an extension, oftentimes a 10-day extension or a 2-week extension during the question and answer period. If that extension is granted, this could have just been an innocent error, somebody who really didn't understand that they were new to the business, for the government program officer or the contract officer, and they didn't really get it, that this was too aggressive. However, if they don't grant it, or they grant a day or two, chances are that's a warning sign, so watch out. Point number two about ways that you can find that the RFP is wired. Unrealistic request, particularly when it comes to the technical scope of work or statement of work. Solutions that require unrealistic deliverables before a contract is awarded should raise a red flag to you. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, my company was evaluating a SharePoint operations and maintenance contract. This was your typical 1-year contract with a 4-year extension. However, when we did research into this contract in the past winters, this was a recompete, we found out that it wasn't a large dollar volume as far as the federal government goes for a 5-year contract. I think it would have been under $1 million, or maybe just slightly over, even for the whole 5 years. They asked for a fully working prototype of a complex workflow system that was to be presented after initial evaluation of potential shortlist winners, that had to be presented on site. This had to be put in your own DevOps environment, and had a lot of very specific things requested in it. That gave us a sign, along with this 10-day or less due date, that something was amiss with this one, and we ended up no bidding that job, as hopefully you would as well. Here's another way that you know that the RFP might be geared for somebody else. Vague wording, particularly in the statement of work. So this is almost the opposite of what I just said, where it's asking for something that's overly specific or too much before the RFP is due. Vague wording could be things that are obviously left out. Now you can get at this. Sometimes you'll have a junior contract officer who doesn't really know that the wording is too vague, or perhaps the one exception would be when they're looking for innovation and development and realize that their proposals that they will receive back are not going to be apples to apples. They're going to get a few oranges thrown in there, but that's what they're looking for. Typically, this isn't the case with federal RFPs, particularly those that are posted on FedBizOpps or eBuy. They have some very specific things in mind. If they're not defined, and in your Q&A period with the contract officer, if you're given some kind of an answer like, well, the answers that you need are all found in the proposal, this is indicative that somebody else knows what they really want. Of course, many people proceed with this anyway, and they make some very fundamental errors. For instance, they'll put in too much fat for a what-if scenario, or they'll put in lots of exception clauses or subject tos. Both of those tend to lend themselves to a possible loss when it comes to price, or because you're just ticking off the contract officer by putting in too much subject tos. The other thing that people do is they'll put in an unrealistically low number and deal with the consequences later. I don't have to tell you how bad of an idea that is, that even if you win, you might lose when it comes to management and expectation management on the contract. So watch out for the vague wording. The last one I'll go over that's a sign that the RFP could be rigged or geared to somebody else is overly specific past performance requests. If the contract officer is asking that you have deep experience in Agency A and Division B with System C and Subcomponent D, there's probably a chance that there's only one company who's going to be able to answer those questions. That's the incumbent, and your purpose in responding to this is to provide lower prices and put price pressure on the incumbent to get his or her price down, that company's price down. Now, in any of these scenarios, if you see one of these, it's time to take a real hard look with your proposal evaluation team to see if this is worth going after. If they come in bunches, you've got bigger problems. Stay away. Spend your time in business development efforts that you can shape RFPs and shape some opportunities that might happen a little bit longer, a little bit further out than worrying about this bluebird right now, because chances are you're wasting your time.